All right, let's talk about a huge power shift that's happening right now in the cloud. It's a really fascinating story about a new kind of challengers, some absolutely massive opportunities, and really the future of AI itself. So let's dive in. So, when you think about the cloud, what pops into your head? For most of us, it's those giants, right? You've got AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud. They've been running the show for years. But is that really the whole picture? Well, you might want to think again. There's a totally new class of competitors coming up, and here's the thing. They're not trying to be clones of the big guys. No, they're playing a completely different game, and it is seriously shaking things up. We're talking about something called the Neocloud. So what is that? Basically, think of them as specialist cloud providers. They're laser focused. They jump into the gaps the huge hyperscalers just can't or won't fill. Things like handling specific regional data laws or providing the super high-powered gear you absolutely need for cutting-edge AI. Now, to really get why this is such a big deal, you just have to follow the money. And trust me, the prize they're all fighting for, it's enormous. $250 billion. And that's not just some random number. That is the prize. According to ABI Research, that's what the market for GPU as a service is going to be worth by 2030. We're talking about the fundamental building blocks, the hardware that powers the entire AI revolution. And what's super interesting here is what's actually driving all that growth. We hear all about training these massive AI models, and that gets all the press. But look at this. By 2030, a staggering 80% of that demand is going to come from AI inference. That's the part where you're actually using the AI in the real world. That's where the work really happens, day in and day out.
Now, if we look at a map, North America is the king of the hill for now, holding about 88% of the market. But you can see a change is coming. By 2030, that number is expected to drop down to 72%. And why? It's because of this global push for what's called cloud sovereignty, where more and more countries are saying, hey, we want our data and our AI kept right here within our own borders.
So you've got this massive market just sitting there, ripe for the picking. How does a smaller Neocloud company even begin to compete with a monster like Amazon? Well, the answer is simple. They go on a shopping spree. I mean, think about it. Trying to build a whole suite of services from the ground up to compete with the hyperscalers is pretty much impossible. So instead, Neoclouds are moving incredibly fast. They're buying up startups left and right to get new tools for data, for software, for AI. It's like an arms race to build a complete tech arsenal. And this table right here just shows you that strategy in action. Just look at CoreWeave, one of the biggest Neocloud players. In 2025 alone, they bought companies for better AI model tracking, for AI agent training, and even to get into specialized industrial AI. So you see, they're not just buying more servers, they're buying know-how and entire technology platforms. But okay, buying the right software is only half the puzzle. To really go toe-to-toe with the giants, you need the right hardware to run it all on. And that leads us to the next big chapter, a really high-stakes bet on silicon. Up until now, Neoclouds have pretty much been relying on the usual suspects for their chips. NVIDIA, AMD, Intel. But putting all your eggs in one or two baskets like that is super risky. It leaves you wide open to supply chain nightmares, crazy price swings, and the awkward fact that your main supplier might also be your number one competitor. And it's not just me saying it. The experts totally agree. Paul Schell from ABI Research puts it plainly. Neoclouds have got to start looking for other options. The ones who win in the future will be the ones who diversify their hardware partners. So it really comes down to this choice right here. Do they play it safe and stick with the incumbents? Or do they take a chance and partner up with these new innovative challengers in the chip space? Companies like Groq, Cerebras, or SambaNova. These guys are building really specific chips that could give them a huge competitive advantage. So the takeaway here is pretty clear. For Neocloud that wants to win, especially in those sovereign AI markets we talked about, grabbing onto these new challenger chips and open standards, well, it's not just a nice idea, it's a critical strategy for survival. But even if you make all the right acquisitions and you pick the smartest hardware, none of it matters without this one last crucial piece of the puzzle. Neoclouds are facing a massive, maybe even an existential hurdle. They have to win over the enterprise customer. This slide, wow, this tells such a powerful story. In 2024, 62% of CoreWeave's revenue came from just one customer, Microsoft. Let that sink in. A leading Neocloud is basically just a supplier to one of the very same giants it's supposed to be competing against. And that right there is the existential threat. If these Neoclouds can't build their own relationships directly with big companies, they risk getting trapped in the supply chain forever. They'd just be these faceless commodity brokers selling raw computing power to the giants, while the giants get all the credit and capture all the real value. So what's the game plan? Well, first, they have to get out of the back room and start talking directly to enterprise clients. Second, they have to build their own brand that people trust. And third, they have to prove that they offer real, measurable value that's more than just renting out some GPUs. And that really is the multi-billion-dollar question for this whole industry, isn't it? Are these specialized players going to break out and become the next generation of tech leaders, or are they just going to get sucked into the hyperscalers' orbit, becoming another cog in their massive machines? It leaves you with a really fascinating final thought. We're in a world that is being completely remade by AI. The old rules just might not apply anymore. And that very specialization that makes these Neoclouds look like niche players today could be the exact thing that makes them the giants of tomorrow.